All right, peace and greetings, YouTubers. So welcome to another edition of In the News. Talk about some crazy what the heck thinking. This is coming out of Michigan. And so long story short, Oakland University has decided that because we're now in a climate where you have a bunch of crazy gunmen who like to just go and shoot people by the dozens for literally any and everything. It's literally to the point where somebody go to 7-Eleven and they don't have free Slurpees on free Slurpee day and now everybody has to die. Like, that's literally the climate we're living in at the moment. Mass shooting every 5 minutes over anything. And so the university decided, as a response to make sure that the students are safe, why don't we give all of the students hockey pucks? And we can arm them with hockey pucks, and if somebody comes in the classroom, they can throw the pucks at the gunman, and then the gunman gets hit in the head, they pass out, the confetti falls with the balloons, and then there's pyrotechnics outside, they get the key to the city, and everybody is safe. And so, first of all, my question is, we've had this discussion before. I talked about this before where there was a school district, and I think it was in Florida, and the school district wanted to give students rocks to throw. Just load the backpacks up with some rocks and throw the rocks if there's a gunman who comes in there. And I'm like, okay, some elementary students, right. So let's see how that works with a second grader throwing some rocks at somebody with an AK-47. Let's see how that one works. But yeah, so, it's crazy because now we're in this climate where rather than addressing the larger issue, you're literally putting the full burden of just surviving on the people who shouldn't have to worry about being a freaking Power Ranger when they go to class. I'm already paying $50,000 to come to this school. Now I got to be a Power Ranger too. And then knowing how people already are, everybody's not athletic. Everybody doesn't have good aim. I already see this being a disaster just to begin with. First of all, if you have a gunman come into the classroom, especially a college classroom, usually the door is by the front of the classroom where the professor would lecture. So if the professor's doing a lecture and then crazy gunman comes in and now both the professor and the gunman are there, people start throwing pucks. I feel bad for the professor. Hopefully the professor knows how to get down, or maybe they got a helmet and a bulletproof vest on, because the professor's most likely going to get hit by one of these pucks. Secondly, something like the whole puck idea only works if the entire class is on the same page, which means that if someone were to come in, everybody would already have to have that instinct to just go in and magically have that puck that's magically right where it's supposed to be, not lost in the bottom of somebody's purse or in the back of the backpack, or maybe they packed it in the wrong bag and the bag is in the dorm, so they ain't got nothing to throw. All they can throw is pencils and anything like that. But literally everybody, in my opinion, would have to throw theirs at the same time in order to guarantee that this person would get hit. But then what you forget is, think about the people in the back of the classroom. If you have somebody in the back of the classroom who doesn't have a really strong arm and they throw, that puck might not make it to the front of the classroom. So they may, clock somebody else a few rows ahead of them in the head with the puck, and now they done passed out and they having a seizure and everything like that. And then that was their only puck to throw, and maybe they missed a signal and threw theirs too early, because maybe it's supposed to be something like everybody throws at the same time, and of course they wanted to be a hero because they wanted the key to the city, so they threw theirs first and then missed, and now the gunman sees them, and now all of us in the class got to die because you done jumped out of the way to try to do something to be a hero and you did it wrong. Like, the logic, I swear everybody's crazy. Like, can we find additional ways to deal with the gun violence other than stupidity? I mean, and then honestly, when it comes to these situations, people are not going to really be thinking logically at that moment, because one, half the class is going to be in shock that somebody just came in the room shooting. Another portion of the class is going to be freaking out, so you're already going to lose that group that's going to be on the floor screaming and hollering and rolling. They're not going to be thinking about grabbing anything to throw. You're going to have people like me who's like, F that, I'm finding a way up out of here, so I'm going to be climbing out the side window, or honestly, this is when it helps to have a small frame. If I see some kind of cabinet or something, I'm climbing up in that crap and closing the door and laying down, and I ain't coming out for like 10 hours. And so I don't think this idea is going to work. I see too many liabilities. I see too many of the wrong people being hit. Plus, I can imagine every time a white kid with a trench coat comes in the classroom, people are going to think that's a shooter. That poor kid just came to class to read because, hell, it's 20 degrees in Michigan during the winter. He just had his trench coat on. Y'all done hit him upside the head with a puck. He was just trying to get his chemistry on. So, I don't know, Oakland University. Y'all let me know how that works. Hopefully y'all don't ever have to use the hockey pucks, but there has to be some other kind of option. I just don't see it working. It just takes me back to, and I talked about this before when we had this discussion, but that lady Ginger, remember the guy, his wife had got fired from the school, like she was a teacher or something like that, and so the husband went to the school board meeting and he came in there with the gun ready to hold everybody hostage, and then mind you, he let everybody leave minus the people on the panel, and then Ginger, who was one of the people who was able to leave, decided she wanted to be a hero and tried to come back in there with her purse and try to hit him with the purse and missed. Okay, these are the people we're dealing with. So when it comes to safety and everything, I don't want my safety to be at the expense of some lunatic who tries to be a hero and can't do it correctly, and now we all got to get shot. I'd be really pissed off. You know what I mean? Anyway, we'll see how that goes. Then Lauryn Hill. I'll say this before I go any further. I appreciate Lauryn for her contributions to music, and that's where I'll stop. But Lauryn Hill is pretty much, she's currently on tour. She's been touring all around the world for like the last year, and she's having a New Year's Eve show. And so, she's going to have the New Year's Eve show and perform all into the new year and everything like that. And so people are worried because, listen, Lauryn has a history of not showing up on time or canceling shows or coming to the show, 2 and 3 hours late and then cussing out the audience for getting an attitude about it. And so, I said this was my solution. Because one, people keep saying, well, why are you stupid enough to even go to a Lauryn Hill concert at this point? But I think people have to understand, when people are fans of somebody, they will put up with their celebrities' antics no matter what. No ifs, ands, or buts. You know what I mean? I can even speak for myself. Y'all know who my favorite entertainer is, and my favorite entertainer is notorious sometimes for having life events that cause them to postpone whole tours or reschedule tours 8 months and then cancel it afterwards. Different things like that. And for some reason, I will still go just because I know eventually they'll make up the show and I'll have me a good time. But, some people are like, why would you still spend money for a Lauryn Hill concert seeing that she don't ever come to nothing and this, that, and third, and the show don't even be that good? I say this should be the solution. Whoever's on Lauryn's team, because mind you, this show's in Oakland as well. Not Oakland University in Michigan, but just Oakland, the city in California. Shout out to Oakland. I got some family over there. Oakland, Antioch, Pittsburgh, Vallejo, Richmond, Concord, Benicia, all of that. Shout out to the Bay. I would just tell Lauryn this. Like, Lauryn's team should tell Lauryn if I'm sure she's smarter than this, but y'all should tell Lauryn that Oakland is on Eastern Standard Time Zone. So that way, when Lauryn shows up 2 or 3 hours late, it's really only 9, 10 o'clock. And so that way, she can still make the show on time. All right, because Lauryn's already told you all, her time and energy just don't align. They don't. That's what she said. That's her excuse for always having late shows. The time and energy doesn't align, and so y'all just have to rock with her and take her when you get her. That's that. No ifs, ands, or buts. And, kudos to those who buy tickets. Tell me how the show was or wasn't. But, listen, I still like Lauryn. People be giving her such a hard time. But at the same time, it's like, Lauryn, I need you to at least try. Just try. Just try. Just, do your shows on time. Don't cancel all the shows. And don't cuss out the audience that, because they're mad that you showed up 2 and 3 hours late. And then when you show up 2 and 3 hours late, don't show up so late to the point that you missed the curfew for the venue, so now you can only perform for 30 minutes. Come on, do better. That's absolutely crazy. I like Lauryn, though. I still like Lauryn. Lauryn has a place in my heart somewhere. There's always a siren. Every time I do a video, the sirens come out every single time, telling all my business about where I live. There was something else I was going to say about Lauryn. I can't even remember what I was going to... Oh, that's what I was going to say. Like, honestly, I think with Lauryn, like I said, I think she's trying, but sometimes you have to recognize where your lane is. I think she's very bold for attempting to do this kind of show, seeing that she has a history of being late. Like, sometimes you just got to recognize where you're not in the right lane. I had to do that before. Like, believe it or not, I played football in high school. Like, I played football for the longest. And then I ended up stopping because, one, I stopped growing. That was the worst thing. Like, I've been the same weight for at least 15 years now. But pretty much I stopped growing. I stopped getting taller. And, like, all my friends and stuff were bulking up and everything like that. And so the last season that I played football, and mind you, I was on defense. I was corner and safety. They got me trying to regulate and stop the ball, and I'm the smallest one on the field. But, true story. This is such a horrible story to tell. So I had this coach who was just freaking crazy, just a freaking lunatic. And so he claims that he coached at Arizona State. He swore to God. And mind you, I'm like, well, what you doing at our high school then? But anyway, for some reason, he was just mad at the world. So all we ever did was run. Like, literally run. In the summers, we would have 2 practices a day. And so the first practice wasn't even practice. It was just conditioning. And not conditioning like going in the gym and working out. No, it was just running. You put on all the gear, and you just do sprints back and forth down the field, up and down. Now, the good thing was summers in Seattle are only 80 degrees with no humidity. So it's not too hot. And then after you do the field, then you do sprints up and down the hill. That crap used to be so tiring. And then the second practice was actually practice. But by then, you had no energy to do anything. But I remember when the school year kicked in, I mean, he made us run so much. Just run. And at this point, I'm discovering that I have other talent. So I'm really not even pressed to play football anymore. And so there was this one day, I was just already tired because I had PE as my last class anyway. And we had just did like this thing called the perimeter where you had to run around the whole campus and you had to do it in a certain amount of time. Just did the perimeter. I'm winded, I'm tired, and I know we're running today. I'm like, I'm not running. I'm not doing this. But the rule was nobody could miss practice. If you miss practice, the whole team suffers. I was like, shoot, how do I get out of this? And so I was like, let me come up with a good story and a good way to get out of practice without the whole team having to suffer. And so I was like, actually, let me just tip out of here. I'm gonna just go and pretend I wasn't at school today. And so while I'm trying to, get on the bus and get up out of there, someone's like, Michael, what are you doing? What are you doing? Where are you going? We got practice. And so for some reason, I don't even know why this came to my head. I was like, my mom had a stroke. I gotta go. Like, it was so horrible. And so I make it home, and please don't judge my story. This is such a horrible thing I did. And so I'm thinking I'll just be good. I can just go home, chill. I'll come to practice the next day. Man, the whole team, they made me this big giant card. Like the whole team signed the card and everything. The coach called the house. I was like, damn. And there's nothing like having your father answer the phone and getting the news that his wife had a stroke, but his wife was sitting right on the couch watching Judge Judy. Like, if you only knew what went down in that house, the way I got cussed out, it was so bad. And see, that's when I recognized, like, okay, you know what? I like football, but I don't like it like this. And if I'm not going to be as committed as I once was the year before, maybe I should find other endeavors. If you really that pressed to the point where you don't want to run like the rest of the team, then go do something else. And so that's when I discovered, I'm better off at track anyway. And then I had a scholarship for school with track, even though I didn't take it because I went to Howard instead. But it's okay. So yeah, Lauryn, that's funny. And then I don't know if you've seen this story about the pilot out of Japan. He was sentenced to 10 months in prison for being 9 times over the legal limit before he tried to fly. He was going to fly all the way from London to Tokyo 9 times over the legal limit, like super drunk. That's not even like twisted. I don't even know how he didn't black out. Like, okay. I don't know, that's kind of scary, ain't it? Picture you about to get on a plane and then your pilot's twisted like that and you're about to go 40,000 feet in the air. I already told you how my fears are with flying sometimes. And it's crazy because I feel like, I don't know if y'all do this the same time or you notice this as well, but anytime I'm getting ready to fly, like if I have to fly in a few days or something, it seems like everything that comes on TV is about a plane crash. I'll be flipping, and then that's when all of the why planes crash episodes come on, and that's when there's the documentary on TWA Flight 100, and then that's when you start talking about the missing flight over Malaysia, and that's when you talk about the flight that got blown up over Scotland. I'm like, yo, and I'm like, why is all this stuff coming on at the same time? Nope, flip. You find something else to watch. So, like, I'm already paranoid. Like, when I get on a plane, just to begin with, the first thing I do already is I take a look to the left. I look in that cockpit, and I look at the pilots. I make sure they're good. Like, they're good. Because after I saw that Denzel movie, I just be looking like, look, let me know now so I can just not get on the plane. And then the worst thing, I was on a flight once, and this lady, I don't know if it was her first time flying or what, but she made all of us want to get off the plane because she kept talking about how she had a vision and she was standing there crying, and like the family was pissed off because they were like, well, just get off the plane, because she was there with her family and she didn't want to get on, so she just stood at the front and what it was is she didn't want to disappoint the family because they were on their way somewhere and everything, but she was too scared to get on the plane. She's like, I kept having a vision, and I'm sitting in the seat of the vision, and I wanted her to explain what the vision was because I needed her to say something like, I recognized that seat over there, so I knew so that would be my cue to get off the plane. But the family kept cussing her out, and then eventually the lady stayed on the plane, which made it worse because when I tell you, every time we hit any bit of turbulence, that lady had a whole meltdown. I swore we were going to have an emergency landing, but we didn't. And so that would be some crazy stuff if your pilot is drunk like that. Like, if you that twisted, just stay home. Anyway, let me get into some real stories after this last one. And then I see that Candyman is being remade. I don't know if you remember that movie. Like, if you were a child that grew up in the 90s, Candyman was that movie that had every black child shook. That's that, you didn't go in the mirrors. I still don't say that crap in the mirror because I heard that crap was a true story. I didn't know. I thought it was just a movie. And then I was talking to somebody about it the other day, and I'm like, no, it's a true story. It's like it happened in the South somewhere. I'm like, I don't remember hearing that. But yeah, Candyman, I refuse to say that crap in the mirror even today. Don't think I'm a punk. I'm just not crazy. There's just some things I don't play with. Because I like my life and I like to sleep. I like my peace of mind. I like to sleep good. I don't need to be having visions and stuff while I'm sleeping, and then I still got to go to work the next day. But it will be interesting to see how that movie goes. And hopefully they don't mess this up. It's the same guy that did Get Out. So we shall see how it goes. I'm sure it'll be a pretty good movie. And then some of you are asking me my opinion about the Mississippi Senate race. And I'll say this, and some of you are not going to like my response, but I'm disappointed, but I'm not shocked because to me, this was an expected result. And based on what I've seen happen in Georgia and in Florida and in Texas, you honestly shouldn't be shocked either because this is largely a conversation about whiteness. Can we be honest? Like, can we have that conversation? It's a conversation about the ideology of whiteness. And when I'm speaking of whiteness, I'm speaking about the mindset and I'm speaking about the socioeconomic wealth. and the idea of power. And when you mix those three things together, it can make a deadly combination that isn't really great for everybody else. And so I've done several videos that already kind of address this. One was called Donald Trump is America's Reality, and that was done after the election. And I did another one talking about Charlottesville, and there's a few other ones. But pretty much, here is the issue. In my experience as a black man, I wake up every day knowing that I'm operating in a world of whiteness. And in addition to that, I will always be collateral to the decisions of white people as a collective when it comes to anything. Now, don't get me wrong. You do have white Americans who understand how the world works, who understands right and wrong, who understands that racism exists, who understands that there are oppressions that happens to different groups of people, and they fight hard, and they try to change that, and they recognize that they benefit from things, and they want to make sure that other people have opportunities, and sometimes they even feel bad and recognize that, man, history kind of sucks in this country. I want to do something about it. You have that demographic. However, you have an even larger demographic who doesn't have time for any of that. No ifs, ands, or buts. And here's a perfect example. In my opinion, white Americans have the opportunity to end systematic racism in America if they wanted to. Are they going to do it? No, because that means they have to give up too much. That means it's giving too much of an opportunity for other people to have a chance to be successful in the country. And so here's a perfect example. Let's say you have a candidate who runs for office. And hell, it can be a white man. Let's say it's a white man running for office, and he says, I want to do all these great things, I'm going to do all this, but also one thing I want to do is, I think black people have suffered enough in this country. I think we have to give them reparations for whatever's happened in the past. And let's just say his definition of reparations wasn't even anything to do with money as far as just giving people checks. Even if he just said, for the next 20 years, higher education will be free for all black Americans who can trace their lineage to slavery. Whether it's getting, an undergraduate degree, whether it's getting a graduate degree, getting a doctoral, going to law school, it's all free. It will be paid for. Do you think white America's voting for that? They're not. And that's because that what that means is this. 20 years of free education for black people is not going to fix the 400 years of everything that's happened before. However, it creates opportunity. Opportunity creates competition. If you're not skilled and you're not talented and you've rolled the wave on mediocrity because something may have been handed to you, or maybe you did work for what you had, but the tools and the resources were handed to you because, for black folks, we never got the tools and the resources. When y'all keep pushing this whole pull yourself up by the bootstrap, again, we didn't even get the boot or the strap. We don't even know where to find the boot at. We walking barefoot, and somehow we're supposed to pull ourselves up by the bootstrap. But, giving that opportunity to black Americans to better themselves means that there are going to be some white people who fall by the wayside because maybe they just don't have the skills to match up to whatever's going on. You know what I mean? And so what that means is people lose things. They're not giving that up. They're not, because it means that it's an opportunity for black people to have some of what they have. And in this country, one of the biggest things that kind of screws everybody over is listen, we recognize that the extremely wealthy run everything. And so for those who are not extremely wealthy, for some people, what makes them feel that they're validated, what makes them feel that they have value is that they have whiteness. They have whiteness to sit behind. And so even if you, and I've quoted this Lyndon B. Johnson quote a million freaking times, but he even stated it himself. If you can teach the poorest white man that he's better than the best black man, he'll always vote against himself. And that's what you saw happen in Mississippi. Mississippi had an opportunity to change a bunch of projections for that state. Creating a better opportunity, especially in healthcare and education. And they chose, they didn't. It wasn't even going to be a conversation. To hell with the Epsi dude. We're going to go with Cindy High. And the thing about it is, never mind the fact that Cindy High is already a racist, whatever she is. We already know that racism is there. She didn't even have a platform. You know what I mean? Her platform was solely based on how people feel as far as race. Getting people energized and getting people afraid of the other. Getting people enraged about the other. That was her platform. And so people voted for that. And you know what's funnier? If Epsi, the guy who lost, had he been a white Republican running with that exact same platform, he would have won. But the fact that you have a guy who looks like him trying to make some change, no, we're not voting for that. You know what I mean? And so, like I said, going back to my theory about the dude and reparations, just a conversation about reparations scares people. They don't want to hear that. And to be honest, I think reparations would be such a huge project. It's almost terrifying for some people to process, because if you're trying to make black people whole in this country based on everything that's happened in the past, you got to do more than just write a check. Okay, one, it's you have to just think about housing in general. The housing discrimination that has existed for the last 100 years plays a role into how America is currently laid out. You'd have to seam rip and undo that just to make black people whole in the conversation when it comes to housing, when you're talking about what happened with the FHA loans, when it happened with the redlining, everything that happened with even the predatory lending. All of that plays a role. That's just one piece, all right? Then you have the conversation about land. That plays a huge role in everything, okay? That's generational wealth. A lot of the people who are wealthy in this country today, the corporations in which they may represent or what they work for, come from revenue generated from slavery, come from revenue generated from land sold after slavery, come from literally anything that was oppressive to black folks. Somehow a check was written off of it. You know, it generated some kind of wealth. You have that. So just a conversation about land. You know, unfortunately, black people don't own a lot of land when you're talking about tangible resources. And it ties right back into the earlier conversation about housing, okay? And then don't even get me started on generational wealth, all right? Because when we want to talk about generational wealth and the wealth that has been accumulated in this country by white Americans based on the oppressions of black people, that in itself can be a separate video. If I skip that and just jump into education, all right? If you want to just talk about the atrocities that have happened in education, trying to make black Americans whole when it comes to something like education, I do think education should be free for black Americans. No ifs, ands, or buts. Sorry, it shouldn't even be a debate. Based on everything that's happened, you should be ashamed if you get pissed off because there's a black person going to school for free in this country after you didn't have all these handouts. I'm sorry, you shouldn't be pissed off about it. But like, literally, just making education whole. The fact that black Americans really weren't even allowed to learn until less than 100 years ago. Literally less than 100 years ago. And that wasn't even top-notch education. That was some subpar nonsense. And even in 2018, it's the same thing. Literally, the black experience when it comes to education is based on a zip code. If you get born into the wrong zip code, too bad for you, because you know what? You can go to jail if you decide to try to put your child in a school that's not in the right zip code, depending on the tax codes. So that's a conversation. And then we've watched countless politicians continue to go out of the way to cut and gut educational programs, especially those programs that benefit black Americans as a collective. You watch the budget cuts over and over and over and over. And the worst part about it is much of the education that black Americans have received, especially in K through 12, has been some nonsense anyway. It's been something that hasn't empowered them to be great with anything because they've been taught that their experience doesn't matter. For the longest K through 12 experience, black history is what? Slavery to Oprah in 20 pages and Barack Obama became president. That's your history. Now, let me continue to tell you all about Thomas Jefferson. And we're going to spend 10 days talking about Paul Revere. All he did was ride on a horse and say the British are coming, but it's important enough that it needs to be in 10 pages. So we're not going to teach you about your contributions to society. And as a matter of fact, the Egyptians were white. And as a matter of fact, if you go to the state of Texas, if Michelle Bachmann would have had her way, slaves would have been unpaid interns. That's American education for black folks. So that's some nonsense. So even with that, like I said, I think education should be free on the higher level because definitely there has to be some seam ripping. Black people literally have to take their children home and teach them tons of things in addition to what they learned in school because they didn't learn anything, if we're really being honest. You know, if you really want to be that parent and you want your children to have any kind of intelligence, you have to teach them so much more than what they got at school. And then prison reform and the judicial system. That has been something that has continuously targeted black Americans. Everything from COINTELPRO on down. You know, literally, you have so many black Americans who have been falsely convicted of crimes. You have black Americans, and I think every last one of them should get some kind of check. I think any black person who's been a victim of police brutality, there should be something coming in the mail. Literally, you literally even have the example of, what was his name, Raimundo Atesiano or something like that. That was the guy in Florida. He was the police chief. And in his town, there was a bunch of burglaries. So to make everybody feel better about the burglaries being handled, even though they weren't, he decided to go and start just randomly arresting black people for crimes they didn't commit, just so he could meet a quota and say, hey, we arrested 30 people this week. And so you have people getting arrested and charged and convicted for crimes that they didn't even commit. So the police that were on that force, the ones who committed to it, some of them are already serving their time, but this is the police chief. This is the guy in charge. The guy in charge is going out of his way to specifically target certain groups of people and vilify them because you recognize that in this country, once you have a conviction and you've done time or you've done probation or whatever it is you've done as far as a punitive response to your actions or actions that you were accused of, your life is never the same. That changes everything. That changes everything when it comes to getting housing, when it comes to getting jobs, when it comes to qualifying for social programs. It changes everything. Don't let it be a felony. Don't let it be a violent crime. You know, all of that changes everything. And even on a bigger scale, you have the Annie, what was her name? Dukem lady? That was the woman. She was the woman who did the forensics and the drug testing and everything like that. And it turned out that she lied about 34,000 different cases. 34,000. Let me say that again. 34,000 different cases. One more time just to make sure y'all heard that. 34,000 different cases. Now, y'all over here losing your minds about the 6,000 people in the caravan. Let me tell you about the 34,000 people who were convicted of something that they didn't do because she lied about a drug. You know, pretty much she's the one doing the drug testing and everything like that, and testing people for drug crimes and everything like that. It was to the point where there were cocaine cases. If they didn't test for anything, she was putting cocaine in the test just to get false results. Literally going out of her way to give false results to imprison people. That's the experience of blackness in America. And so to make black people whole, anybody who's a victim of that, they should get a check. You know what I mean? Like, that's the experience. And now you just saw this guy in Ferguson. What was his name? Bassem, I forgot his last name. But he's the 5th person out of Ferguson to die, randomly. The 5th activist. You remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the people who've all, oddly enough, just somehow randomly died. They spoke out a little too much, and either they were shot or they were found hung or they were found in a burning car. Okay? This is the country black Americans have to somehow matriculate through. And we're not even done. Because then, when you just get to the idea of history, history is some BS as far as what we've been taught. Because history has literally been reimagined and restructured to push a narrative that isn't 100% accurate. It's a narrative that pushes the idea that only white Americans and Europeans are the civilized moral compass of the world. And so now, in order to make black people whole, we need to go back and look at history and actually put actual facts there. There's too many falsehoods that are being pushed as true. If I see one more person come in my comment section and quote that damn Darwin BS about black people having a lower IQ than white people, I swear, I will choke somebody. Like, literally, history has been so warped. And by the way, again, if you want to challenge that, there's a video I did called My Thoughts on Standardized Testing or something like that. And it answers everything about Darwinism and all the nonsense he had as far as black people being inferior and having the same intelligence levels as monkeys and crap. Bye. And so, again, that's the experience of black Americans. And then when you're just talking redistricting with politics, to make black people whole, I think every political district in this country needs to be rezoned and created into a space where it's actually fair. You want to make black people whole. I think the black people who were victims of the North Carolina sterilizations should be getting a check. If you don't remember, a bunch of young black women in North Carolina up until the 1980s were being sterilized after getting pregnant. Sterilized. They can't even have kids. So maybe there may have been something where, I don't know, maybe they had a child when they were young and they didn't plan on having that one. But don't worry, you ain't having no more because you're sterilized. That's an experience. I think black people who are victims of any kind of racial riots that's happened in the past, and there's been over 100 of them in literally every major metropolitan city. The ones most of us talk about are Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Rosewood. But, if you can trace your lineage to that, there should be a check coming in the mail. You know what I mean? And even when you're just talking about representation in media and in entertainment, in order to make black people whole in that, there needs to be fair representation in all of that, And then, again, we rarely even scratched on the surface of generational wealth and money. The wealth accumulated through black oppression, where everybody benefited except for black people. And then black people got vilified for being poor. And black people got punished for not having anything. Like, there's so many conversations to be had. And in order to make black people whole, that's just scratching the surface on what I think reparations should be. So do you think white people are going to do all that? No. Why? They're not going through all that. They're going to tell you get over it, move on. There's going to be people who come in this comment section and say, you make racism exist because you call it out. There's going to be people whose feelings are hurt because they saw this video and now they're mad at the world. And so now they really ain't fighting for anything because now they feel like they're attacked. So the hell with black people. We don't care about your issues. Y'all are just some hateful people. People don't understand that the plight of blackness means you're always in defense mode. Voting for us means we have to go and think about which candidate is the least racist, which candidate is going to do the least damage to black Americans. Many white Americans don't have to experience that. And the saddest part is the white Americans who do, especially the working class white Americans, a lot of them, because, again, they've been almost conditioned to understand that idea of whiteness and that's what keeps them above. They're willing to put a Ted Cruz in over like the Beto guy. In a state that could have really benefited from some of those progressive policies, they're willing to put Ted Cruz in, who hasn't done anything in 6 years. Put Ted Cruz in there. And whiteness is so strong in this country that you have minorities who immigrate here and still align with whiteness and will go against their own demographic in which they come from. Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. You know what I mean? Will go against their own demographic just to climb the ladder, just to have a piece of the pie. And so, again, that's Mississippi. That's Georgia. That's the United States. That's the experience of blackness. And so, like I said, for me, I don't have expectations for white Americans with anything when it comes to my well-being. I can't, because I have to protect myself. And so, and I mean that from a loving manner. Does that mean I dislike anybody? No, I don't dislike anybody. I may dislike what certain groups of people do. I may dislike some of the ideologies that exist out there, but no, I don't have hate in my heart for anybody. However, I have to be protective of myself. I have to be protective of those who look like me. I have to be protective of my offspring and everything like that to come later down the line. I just can't be someone who sits back and chills and, well, things get better, let's just pray it away. I can't be that person because I'm literally watching the world change around me. And as somebody who works in the community, and I have, like, even in my field of work now, I literally probably have to do twice as many grants just to make sure I can keep the funding to keep my center operational because the tides have changed in this country. So I can't sit back and just be silent. And I know these conversations make people very uncomfortable. They hate it. They can't stand it. But you know what? Again, there's that conversation of whiteness. Like I said, in my opinion, white Americans have the opportunity and they have the power to change a lot of the wrongs in this country. But they're not going to do it because it means they have to lose something. And they don't understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of that. They don't want that. That's why so many are afraid of the idea of them becoming a minority in 30 years. And at the end of the day, even when white people do become the minority in this country, that doesn't change anything. The power structure is still the same. You know, I don't know why they're so afraid. Nothing is going to change. It's going to be the same nonsense. Anyway, this video went so left field. I know y'all mad. Some of y'all just wanted to get a nice little in the news story, get a chuckle and go on, get your coffee and go to sleep. Now you got to go to bed pissed off. I just, you know, I think I'm even sweating a bit. You know, it's just, the world is already such a terrible place sometimes. And I think Mississippi it just shows you. And I feel bad because it's not everybody, you know what I mean? Like, everybody doesn't operate that way. And there are so many good people on this planet and in this country who just want the best for themselves and their family and everybody else. And unfortunately, because they don't have the resources or the know-how or the education, they have to be victim to larger systems that pretty much prey on them. And my biggest wish in this country is, one, I wish many white Americans would recognize that y'all, like, when you're talking just a conversation of socioeconomic class, together there is better change with group economics, but it can't exist when you have an idea of whiteness that continues to keep people separated. You know, like, this country had several opportunities for not an uprising, but the working class and the lower ends of middle class to really change the tide in how this country operated. And it failed. Why? Because race got in the way. People couldn't fathom the idea of being equal to somebody who was black. Couldn't fathom the idea of somebody black having the same thing. Absolutely not. Nope. And so they let it fall by the wayside. You know, you saw it happen with the building of unions, and black people were excluded from that. And so even though they had all these union wars and riots, people got killed and stuff, I'm like, you know what? You could have had more support had you allowed black people to be in those unions back in the early 1900s. You know, all of those are conversations. And so, like I said, the idea of whiteness, you just have too many who are going to always protect that. And yes, on the other side, you have many white Americans who are fighting and they just really want to just almost restructure everything, give everybody a chance. But unfortunately, you have too many who aren't educated on the subject. You have too many who don't even believe racism exists. You have too many who don't want to see a change. And you have too many who really, their interest is just them. And so, again, you know, that's the country you're living in. And it's sad. I know everybody's talking about the Great Blue Wave. And yeah, okay, the House got 40 Democrat seats. Cool. Can we talk about what's not about to change, though? You know, other than them stopping Trump, what's really changing in this country? 10 years from now, it's going to be the same nonsense. You know, poverty rates are still going to be the same, if not worse. Because I do think there's going to be a recession coming in the next 2 years. Not to try to scare you all, but I do think a recession is on the way. You know, as long as America continues this whole America first viewpoint while the rest of the world is starting to collaborate and build themselves up, and we're trying to somehow be an isolated island all of a sudden and sever ties and burn bridges with all the people we do money business with, you know, I don't see us being that. You know, we're literally living in an era where you're going to watch the downfall of America in favor of other countries who will surpass us in a lot of things. So as long as we continue to strip education and strip healthcare and strip everything, you know, for the idea of, one, protecting whiteness and, one, keeping the rich comfortable, that's the country you live in. Anyway, this has been a very long video. Happy Friday, everybody. I'm out. Subscribe.